Hello and welcome back to another episode of Diablo to D&D. My name is David, and today I am revisiting the gems that I made a couple weeks ago, months ago, a while back, and finally cleaning them up and making them a unified, item system. So way back when I did the gems, I did it in the Gems and Socketables video a while back. I had a bunch of problems with them, mainly scaling, because in Diablo there are 5 levels of gems, and there are 3 different effects based on whether they are socketed into weapons, armor, or shields, which means that every gem had 15 different effects based on where they were put and the quality of the item. This was a big thing, and most of them, or a lot of them, I just didn't have the capacity to make, because, when you're dealing with, a +1 makes a huge difference, and it gets even worse when you're stacking on, 2 or 3. But if you condense it down and you have say a +1, a +2, +2, +3, +3, or something like that, then what are the 2 levels of gems for? So this week I had an epiphany. Get rid of the qualities. The reason why the qualities exist is so that you're not getting a ton of power too early on in Diablo. There's level requirements, but there's also just the fact that adding in a huge amount of one stat, take your pick, whichever one, could unbalance the early game. So instead of dealing with 15 effects for each gem, I'm dealing with only 3. And today I'm going to go over what each of those effects are and why I decided on those effects. So let's start with the starting paragraph. These gemstones have been specifically cut and enchanted to provide bonuses when socketed into items. The effect each gemstone provides depends on the item it's socketed into. Now, the reason why these have been enchanted is because, one, so you don't just pick up a Sapphire or an Amethyst or something from the ground and suddenly it's a magical item whenever socketed into it. So the way that you get enchanted gems is by going to a gem shrine and enchanting it with that power. This way, you have a choice to, say, for example, the diamond that you picked up. Do you want to hold on to it for socketing, or do you want to hold on to it so that you have a diamond on hand for Raise Dead? Or Revivify, excuse me. But this does make them magical items, which means that they are going to be a little bit more expensive. Now, under this paragraph at the top here, I have a note with the 5 levels of gem from previous. I have just left that there so that I have a reference of a rough estimate of what to look for when pricing these gemstones. It's just something for later, so don't worry about it. So let's jump into the Amethyst. It is a gemstone, and when socketed into an item, it gains the following properties based on the item type. For weapons, you get a +1 bonus to attack rolls with this weapon. For armor, you have a +1 bonus to your strength score up to a maximum of 20. And for a shield, you have a +1 AC while wielding this shield. In Diablo, of course, weapons give you attack rating, your armor gives you strength, and your shields give you defense. This is quite literally just a 1-to-1, or as close to a 1-to-1 as you can get. It's a pretty straightforward thing. I don't have to deal with a +1 item, and then a +2 item, +3 item, so on and so forth. This is just, here's what it is. Now, this does get into some interesting things, because you can have up to 6 sockets on some weapons. And that means, yes, you could potentially get a +6 bonus to your attack rolls, which is huge. But this does mean that you are not adding damage from the other gems into your weapon. It's just an accuracy bonus, very much similar to the archery fighting style, for example. As for the armor, bumping up your strength score, of course, is a very powerful thing, but it is to a maximum of 20. Now, armor can only have 4 sockets, so you get, if you dump all of your amethysts into your armor, you get at most going from a 16 to a 20. This does introduce a very interesting conundrum, one that Diablo itself actually had. Way back when, there was a bug where if you put on an armor or a weapon that boosted your strength, and then you took off some gear that reduced your stats to where you could not normally wear that item, it allowed you to continue wearing that item because it would just check your strength as it existed right there. This has been since patched in Diablo 2 Resurrected, but this does mean, for example, if you have a wizard, for example, or actually, let's go with a dex-based ranger. They have a 12 strength, and they find an amethyst and they stick it into an armor that has a strength requirement of 13, and they put it on. Does that mean that suddenly they're strong enough to wear the armor? I honestly feel yes. I think that should be fine. Just the differences between the two games. One's more of a mechanical requirement. The other one is just kind of So, take it for what it's worth. In terms of the shield, giving you a +1 to your AC while wielding the shield, a +1 shield, just a blank +1 shield, is an uncommon item. So having a gem that you can socket into your shield up to a maximum of 4, that's a huge amount of AC for your shield, giving you a +6 to your AC. That might be too powerful, but again, these gems should be priced appropriately, and very difficult to actually get a hold of because you have to find that gem shrine, you have to enchant it, and you have to get the amethyst, and so on and so forth. I might put in a requirement that the gem must be of a certain gold cost. That might be something that I have to do to kind of put a nerf in there, so you don't find a diamond that's 5 GP and suddenly I can put it into my weapon and get a ton of damage against undead and whatnot. So something to think about for the future. Speaking of diamonds, this is pretty much more of the same. Weapons, it deals additional damage specifically to undead. As we see with some of the later gems, this damage is actually prorated because it's very specific. It's a very narrow thing. For armor, it gives you a bonus to your charisma score, again up to a maximum of 20. And then for shields, it cuts cold, fire, lightning, and poison damage by 1. Now, let's look at Diablo 2. That diamond there grants weapons additional damage to undead, so there's 1-to-1 there. For armor, however, this one gives attack rating. Now, the reason why I went with charisma instead of attack rating is, 1, so that the gem doesn't step on the toes of the amethyst, but also because it's something that is needed. Think of it like this. Your weapons increase damage, armor increases stats, shields increases defense. And charisma, while not in Diablo 2, is, looking at some of the other games, and I will admit that I kind of went with some Diablo 3, Diablo 4 stuff with some of these. But looking at the other games, they don't have charisma, so instead I just made the diamond charisma, because that just made the most sense. As for shields, it grants all resistance. This is actually pretty good. Now, it's at a lower rate than the other gems, which have a D4, but it does spread out that damage to 4 damage types, or that resistance, that damage cutting to 4 different damage types. For the emerald, it's a poison-themed gem. For your weapon, it deals additional 1d4 poison damage. For your armor, it bumps your dexterity. And for the shield, it cuts poison damage by 1d4. And in Diablo, that's exactly what it does. Additional poison damage, additional dexterity, and additional resistance to poison. For Ruby, it's basically the same thing, only fire for the weapon and shield. And then for the armor, it bumps your constitution. Now, in Diablo 2, we don't have Constitution, but we do have Vitality. And Vitality increases your hit points. The gem does not do that. Instead, it bypasses Vitality entirely and just gives you a bonus to your life. So, it's life-related, so here, have Constitution. For Sapphires, this one is cold aligned. It gives cold damage for weapons, 1d4 damage resistance to cold for shields, and then for your armor, it bumps your wisdom score. Now, this is pulled from the Diablo 4, which increases your willpower, which is what druids use. So I figured, have some wisdom, which is what the D&D druids use. And that is kind of what the D&D gem does. Additional cold damage increases your maximum mana, and then increases your resistance to cold. Now, for the mana, we have another stat called energy, which increases your mana and your stamina, your run energy. This is another one where it's like I had to pick something and stick it in there. So this one I went with wisdom instead. For the skull, this one is a little different. Whenever you critically strike with this weapon, you regain 1d4 hit points. For armor, whenever you regain hit points, you regain an additional hit point. For shields, whenever you're hit with a weapon attack, the attacker takes 1d4 piercing damage. The skull in Diablo 2 is actually very, very useful. For weapons, it has life and mana steal. For armor, it has life regeneration and mana regeneration. And then for shields, it has a thorns effect. Attacker takes some damage. This is pretty much what the skull does in D&D. Critical strikes means that it doesn't happen all that often. The skull in Diablo 2 is not a ton of dual leech, but it is, some amount. That could probably be bumped up to 1d6, but again, I'm just kind of undercutting it so that I can, see how well this works. For the armor, I know one additional hit point isn't all that much. You're not necessarily getting healed in bits and pieces. You're usually getting healed for just a ton of hit points all at once, but I'm not entirely sure. Maybe it could be you get to roll an additional time and choose one result, perhaps, but then it's putting the effect onto you, but it's affecting someone else's die rolls, and that gets kind of weird. So this one I'm, as you can tell, kind of unsure of, but I think where it stands now is still pretty good, or at least good enough. Rounding out the gems here, we have Topaz, which is representing lightning. So weapon adds lightning damage, shield adds lightning resistance, and armor bumps your intelligence. In Diablo, the armor increases your magic find, which is not a stat in D&D and has been giving me grief the whole time I've been trying to adapt items that have magic find. But thankfully, the weapons and shields are lightning damage and lightning resistance. Now, the reason why I picked intelligence for the Topaz is because in Diablo 3 and 4, putting it in your armor grants you additional intelligence, which is the stat for necromancers and wizards and sorcerers, I think. I can't remember off the top of my head. But this does mean that we now have a very nice 1-to-1 for each of these gems. One stat, one gem, and the outlier, of course, being the skull, which has always been it's been a thing. And that's pretty much it. I know it's kind of weird that the revelation that I had was simplify it, but it made this a whole lot easier, and it really does make a difference. Cutting down 15 effects down to 3, it's just nice. Now, I would love to have gotten all 15 different effects if they could have scaled, but I think where it is, where you have to enchant using a gem shrine and so on and so forth, does make the balance a whole lot easier, because you're not necessarily going to end up with a ton of these gems. Now, I'm sure, yes, you can, potentially find a diamond mine or an emerald mine or something, and then find a gem shrine somewhere close by, and you make your profit by shipping these gems over to that shrine and every 1d10 days enchanting them and selling them. Sure, I guess, but, most adventures are going to be, here and gone. That said, I really do like the idea of a small town being built around this gem shrine, and they make their money by importing gems and then enchanting them using this shrine. I mean, 3 to 4 times a month you get, say, 10,000 gold is going to be a pretty good income for a small village. And it might be a nice encounter, a nice one shot or 1 or 2 shot. And you could say that, oh no, someone's defaced this shrine, and, now the magic isn't regenerating, and so this village could disappear. Or that, oh no, someone's stolen the gems that were supposed to be sold, and what are we going to do? We don't have the monthly income anymore. And of course, you could always say, well, now that you've finished this mystery, your reward is a gemstone that you can now socket into your items. So there is a lot of stuff here to work with, and I would be very, very happy if you guys could give me some feedback on what you think. Am I overreacting? Am I in the right? It's not quite how I wanted to phrase it, but am I doing right by Diablo 2 for changing how the armor works, or the armor effects work? Am I undertuning them, overtuning them? Give me some feedback. Test these in your own games and let me know. You can contact me at XenozFan2, that is XenozFan2 on Blue Sky and Reddit. And you can contact the channel directly at Diablo TODND on Blue Sky and YouTube. Thank you much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Have a good whatever.